The Jedi temple stood tall against the Coruscant skyline, its spires piercing the golden light of the setting sun. Inside, Anakin Skywalker paced the halls, deep in thought. He had trained Ahsoka Tano for over a year now, and she had proven herself beyond expectations. But today, the Jedi Council had given him something unexpected, a second apprentice. His name was Galen Marek, though the boy didn't know it yet. He had been found on a battlefield, his force sensitivity detected through a chance encounter with Republic forces. Orphaned, alone, and burning with raw power, he was exactly the kind of student that Anakin understood. Master Yoda and Obi-Wan had warned him against this. Training two apprentices, a dangerous path it is, Yoda had said, his ears twitching. Attachment leads to the dark side. Be careful, Anakin, Obi-Wan had added, but Anakin had waved them off. He was strong enough to handle two apprentices. He walked into the training chamber where Ahsoka stood waiting, arms crossed. She was 17, now confident, fast, and sharp-tongued as ever. Beside her stood the boy, younger, maybe 14, with short brown hair and a haunted look in his eyes. Anakin sized him up. "Galen, huh? You ready to work?" The boy hesitated, then nodded. Ahsoka smirked. "He doesn't look ready." Anakin grinned. "Then let's fix that." Over the following months, their training became relentless. Anakin was a harsh teacher, but he taught them everything. Ahsoka had already been fast, but now she learned to channel her speed into calculated strikes, feints, and acrobatics that overwhelmed enemies. She developed a unique dual-wielding lightsaber form that made her nearly untouchable in battle. Galen, however, was something else entirely. He was raw, untamed energy, a storm of power just waiting to be unleashed. Anakin taught him lightsaber combat, but more importantly, he pushed Galen's force abilities to the extreme. Telekinesis, precognition, even force lightning, which the Council strictly forbade. Anakin let him experiment with all of it. "You have power, kid?" Anakin told him one night after training. "Don't be afraid of it. The Jedi fear strength, but I don't." Galen absorbed every lesson like a sponge. He was reckless, powerful, and fiercely loyal to Anakin. Ahsoka, however, watched with suspicion. Something about this felt off. By the time they saw real war, Ahsoka and Galen weren't just Padawans anymore. They were warriors. During the Battle of Felucia, Ahsoka led a battalion of clone troopers through the thick jungle, her sabers cutting through droids like lightning. Galen was different. He fought alone, using his raw force abilities to send droids flying, crush them mid-air, or even rip them apart. "Remind me never to fight him," Ahsoka muttered. The war made them legends, but it also changed them. Ahsoka still believed in the Jedi. Galen, however, didn't. He saw the way the Jedi Order hesitated, how they held back. He agreed with Anakin. Power should be used, not feared. Anakin watched them both carefully. He saw the flaws of the Jedi Order more clearly now. They were holding back. They were too afraid of attachment, of power, of action. And deep down, he knew Palpatine was right. The Jedi were weak, and weakness would not save the Republic. The Clone Wars raged on. With every battle, Ahsoka and Galen grew stronger, their abilities surpassing even some Jedi Knights. But something was changing in their master. Anakin was becoming more ruthless. He no longer hesitated to use aggression, to push the boundaries of what was considered Jedi-like. And worse, he was passing those beliefs to his students. One night, after a brutal skirmish on Maigito, Ahsoka confronted him. "Master, you've been different lately," she said, arms crossed, her blue eyes filled with concern, more aggressive, more reckless. Anakin didn't look at her. He sat sharpening his mechanical hand with a tool, lost in thought. "The Jedi don't know how to win this war, Ahsoka, but we do." "We're not supposed to be generals," she shot back. "We're supposed to be protectors." Anakin finally turned. To her, his expression cold. "You think our enemies care about that?" Ahsoka flinched at his tone. This wasn't the same master she had once idolized. Galen, however, agreed with him. Later that night, he approached Anakin privately. "She doesn't understand," Galen said. "The Jedi are holding us back." Anakin studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You see it too." Galen had always sensed a storm inside Anakin, the same kind of storm he felt within himself. It wasn't fear, it wasn't weakness, it was power, and power deserved to be used. Word spread through the Jedi Council that Anakin's training methods were unconventional. Mace Windu, never a fan of Anakin, brought it up to Obi-Wan. "Skywalker is dangerous. His apprentices reflect that." Obi-Wan tried to defend him. "Ahsoka is one of the most skilled Padawans in the Order. Galen is rough around the edges, but he is loyal." "Loyal to Anakin," Windu corrected, "not the Jedi." The Council began to watch them closely. Palpatine, ever the manipulator, heard of this and smiled. Good. Everything is proceeding as planned. The mission to Raxus Prime was supposed to be a simple Republic assault. It turned into a bloodbath. During the battle, a Jedi Master, Talaris Bendu, hesitated to attack a Separatist base because of the risk to civilians. Anakin didn't hesitate. "Attack now." Bendu refused. "I won't kill innocents." Galen, still young, but already stronger than most Jedi Knights, glared at the older master. "And how many will die if we let the Separatists escape?" Bendu stood firm. "This is not the Jedi way." Anakin's eyes darkened. "Then the Jedi way is wrong." Without another word, he gave the order. Clone artillery obliterated the base. Separatist forces and innocents alike. Bendu turned in horror. "Skywalker, you—" Galen cut him down without thinking. Ahsoka screamed. "Galen, no!" The battlefield fell silent. The clones stopped firing. Even Anakin seemed momentarily shocked. Galen just stood there, breathing heavily, looking at the dead Jedi at his feet. "He was a traitor," Galen muttered. "He let weakness get in the way of victory." Ahsoka stepped back, shaking her head. "That's not the way, Galen. That's murder." But Anakin didn't reprimand him. He simply placed a hand on Galen's shoulder. "You did what had to be done." And that was the moment everything changed. Ahsoka couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Master Bendu's lifeless body on the battlefield. She saw Galen standing over him, justifying the killing. And worst of all, she saw Anakin agreeing with him. She had always known her master had a dark side. He was reckless, impulsive, and often let his emotions dictate his actions. But this was something else. The next morning she confronted Galen alone. "You crossed a line," she said, voice tight with anger. Galen didn't look guilty. He didn't even hesitate. "The Jedi's rules make them weak, Ahsoka. Master Skywalker sees that. Why can't you?" "Because there are limits, Galen. You don't get to decide who lives and who dies." His expression hardened. "Then who does? The Council, the same people who send us to fight and die while they sit in their temple debating wisdom. The same Jedi who let entire planets burn because of their rules." Ahsoka took a step back, shaken. She realized something terrifying. Galen wasn't just following Anakin anymore. He truly believed what he was saying. "You sound like a Sith," she whispered. For the first time, Galen's confidence wavered. His fists clenched. "No, I'm nothing like them." Ahsoka shook her head. "You're letting the dark side in." He turned away, but not before muttering, "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." Word of Master Bendu's death reached the Jedi Temple. Officially, the report stated that he had died in combat, but rumors spread. The Council began to suspect that something was very wrong with Anakin and his apprentices. Mace Windu called for a meeting. Skywalker's apprentices are dangerous, Windu said. They are learning his ways. If we do not act, we may lose them. To the dark side. Obi-Wan sighed. Anakin's methods are unorthodox, but he's still one of our greatest warriors. We can't afford to lose him. Then we cannot afford to let him corrupt others, Windu countered. Yoda, silent until now, finally spoke. Watch them we must, but act in haste we should not. The council agreed, but their watchful eyes would not go unnoticed. Palpatine knew exactly how to use this to his advantage. Palpatine summoned Anakin to his private chambers. The Chancellor's voice was smooth, careful. "The Jedi Council doubts you," he said. "They do not trust your apprentices. Do you not feel it?" Anakin clenched his jaw. He did. "They fear power," Palpatine continued, "and they fear you, my boy. They always have. You and your apprentices could bring true peace to the galaxy, but the Jedi will never allow it." Anakin exhaled slowly. "I only want to end this war." Palpatine leaned in. "Then let me help you." For the first time, Anakin hesitated. Not because he disagreed, but because he did. Palpatine smiled. "Soon, the Jedi will force your hand. When that time comes, be ready." Anakin left, his mind a battlefield of its own. Ahsoka had made her decision. She could not stand by and watch Anakin slip further into darkness. And Galen, if he continued down this path, he would be lost. She needed to tell the Jedi Council. She met Obi-Wan in secret, away from Anakin's reach. "Something is happening to him," she told her former mentor. "He's teaching us things the Jedi wouldn't allow. And Galen, he's already killed a Jedi, and he doesn't even care." Obi-Wan's face darkened. "I feared this would happen. We need to stop it," she pleaded. Obi-Wan hesitated, then sighed. "I will speak to the Council." But they were already too late. The Jedi Council summoned Anakin. He already knew why. The walk to the chamber felt different this time. The temple halls, once a place of learning and discipline, now felt cold, distant, unwelcoming. The Jedi weren't his family anymore. They were his enemies. Ahsoka had betrayed him. She had run to Obi-Wan, whispered doubts into the Council's ears, and now Mace Windu and the others were calling him to answer for his actions. The chamber doors opened. Anakin stepped inside and saw them all. Yoda, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, and the rest of the Masters. Their faces were grim. Mace didn't waste time. "Skywalker, you have been reckless. Your training of 2 apprentices was already unorthodox, but now we hear of Jedi being killed under your command." Anakin remained silent, his fists tightening. "You are dangerously close to the dark side," Ki-Adi-Mundi added. "Perhaps too close." Then came the worst blow. "You are to surrender your command of the 501st and be placed under observation by the Council," Mace announced. Anakin's heart stopped. His own men, taken from him? "You don't trust me," he said, voice cold. Obi-Wan sighed. "Anakin, this is for your own good." Anakin laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "My own good?" He looked at them all, eyes filled with something dark. "No, you're doing this because I don't fit into your narrow vision of what a Jedi should be." Mace stepped forward. "Stand down, Skywalker. Before you do something you'll regret." Anakin looked at him, then at Obi-Wan. "I already regret ever trusting you." And then he walked out. He didn't return to his quarters. He went straight to Palpatine. The words burned into Anakin's mind. "The Jedi have turned against you. They would see you powerless. They will take your apprentices, strip them of what you have given them. Only I can show you the path to true strength." And Anakin finally understood. Palpatine was right. The Jedi feared power. They feared him. And so, when the Chancellor spoke the words, "Execute Order 66, Anakin didn't resist. He embraced it. The 501st Legion stormed the Jedi Temple. Blue blaster bolts filled the air as clone troopers cut down Jedi, young and old alike. Anakin led them, his blue saber carving through temple guards without hesitation. Ahsoka and Galen had been inside when the attack started. Ahsoka had rushed to the younglings, trying to guide them to safety. She didn't understand. Why were clones, their clones, turning on them? Then she saw him, Anakin, his robes dark, his saber ignited, walking through the flames of the temple like a conqueror. "Master," she whispered. Anakin's eyes found hers. They weren't yellow like a Sith's, not yet, but they weren't the same kind eyes she had known. Galen stepped forward beside Ahsoka, igniting his red saber. He had taken it from a fallen Sith assassin during a previous mission, a trophy, but now it felt fitting. "Master Skywalker," Galen said slowly, watching the bodies around them. "What have you done?" Anakin lifted his saber, pointing it at them both. "I have brought order." Ahsoka's hands trembled. "You killed them." "They were traitors," Anakin said, "just like the Council. And if you stand against me—" A long silence stretched between them. Ahsoka already knew how this would end. She wouldn't stand with him, and that meant they would have to fight. Ahsoka's heart pounded in her chest. She had fought beside Anakin through countless battles, but now, for the first time, she had to fight against him. The temple burned. Around them, Jedi bodies littered the floor. The 501st continued their slaughter, but for Ahsoka and Galen, the war had narrowed to a single moment. Master against apprentice, brother against sister, Anakin against them both. Galen took the first step. "If you want us dead, you'll have to kill us yourself." Anakin's grip on his saber tightened. "Don't make me do this." "You already made your choice," Ahsoka said, her blue blades igniting with a hiss. "Now we make ours." For a brief second, Anakin hesitated. Then he attacked. His strikes came faster than lightning, stronger than a storm. Ahsoka barely parried the first blow before being forced back. Galen met Anakin's assault with raw power, his crimson blade clashing against Anakin's with enough force to shake the temple floor. They moved through the grand hall, weaving between pillars and fallen statues. Ahsoka flipped over Anakin, aiming for his back, but he anticipated her. His saber swung backward without looking, nearly slicing her in half. Galen seized the moment. He unleashed a force repulse, sending Anakin flying into a temple column. But Anakin absorbed the impact, flipping off the wall and launching himself at Galen with a speed that shouldn't have been possible. Galen barely blocked. The sheer power behind Anakin's strike forced him to one knee. "You're strong, Galen," Anakin growled, his blade pressing down. "But you're not strong enough." Ahsoka intervened, kicking Anakin away before he could finish Galen off. "Then we fight together," she panted, standing over her fallen friend. Galen gritted his teeth, gripping his saber. "Fine by me." Together, they charged. The battle tore through the temple. The clash of sabers lit up the darkness, the force shaking the foundation of the ancient halls. Anakin fought like a demon. Ahsoka was fast, faster than ever before, but Anakin was faster. He predicted every move, countered every strike, turned every attack into an opening of his own. Galen fought like a brute force of nature, using raw power and rage to fuel his strikes. But Anakin had mastery. Where Galen attacked with ferocity, Anakin responded with precision. And slowly, they lost ground. Anakin ducked under Galen's swing and drove his boot into his ribs. Crack! Galen screamed as he crashed through a row of stone benches. Then it was just Ahsoka. Anakin struck again and again, his blue blade a blur of death. Ahsoka dodged by the skin of her teeth, barely managing to parry each killing blow. She had trained under him for years. She knew every one of his techniques, But he knew hers, too. Ahsoka flipped backward, gasping for air. Anakin stalked forward. "It doesn't have to be this way, Snips," he said, voice softer. "I don't want to kill you." Ahsoka clenched her jaw. "Then don't." Anakin's eyes hardened. "You chose your side." And with that, he struck. Ahsoka raised her sabers, but he was faster. The Force hit her like a freight speeder, slamming her against a stone pillar. Her lightsabers flew from her hands. Pain exploded through her body. Anakin stood over her now, breathing heavily, his blue saber raised. This was it. He was going to end her. And then, Galen roared. Anakin turned, just in time to catch a massive surge of lightning straight to the chest. The impact sent him flying across the room, crashing through debris. Ahsoka gasped as Galen stumbled toward her, his body smoking, his hands trembling from the sheer power he had just unleashed. "Can't let him win," he panted. Ahsoka grabbed his arm, dragging herself to her feet. "Then we need to get out of here, now." Galen hesitated. "We can still fight." Ahsoka shook her head. "Not today." And together, they ran. The temple was falling. Galen and Ahsoka sprinted through the burning halls, dodging fallen debris and escaping squads of clone troopers. They made it to the lower levels, where an old Jedi transport sat abandoned. "We're leaving," Ahsoka said, powering up the ship. Galen hesitated. "Where do we even go?" "Anywhere but here." The ship lifted off just as Anakin emerged from the ruins of the temple, watching them escape. He didn't stop them. He didn't even move. He simply watched, and as they soared into the sky, Ahsoka whispered one last thing. "Goodbye, Master." Palpatine watched as Anakin knelt before him. "You failed to kill them," the Emperor noted. Anakin clenched his fists. They were never the real threat. Palpatine smiled. "No, they were not." He placed a hand on Anakin's head. "But you, my friend, you will become stronger than any Jedi." Anakin's breath was slow, controlled. He wasn't Anakin anymore. He was Darth Vader. And next time, there would be no mercy. Somewhere, in the outer rim, a ship drifted through hyperspace. Ahsoka sat in silence, staring at the endless stars. Beside her, Galen sharpened his blade. Neither spoke. Both knew what was coming. Anakin Skywalker was dead, and Darth Vader would never stop hunting them. Months had passed since the fall of the Jedi Order. The Republic was dead. In its place, the Galactic Empire ruled with an iron grip, and Darth Vader was hunting. For Ahsoka and Galen, life had become one long escape. They moved from planet to planet, always staying ahead of the Imperial Inquisitors, always running. But they both knew. One day, they would have to stop running. One day, they would have to fight back. Deep in the Outer Rim, Ahsoka and Galen landed on an old fuel station orbiting a dying star. It was a hidden place, off Imperial charts, a perfect meeting spot. As Ahsoka powered down the ship, Galen was already moving toward the hollow terminal. The message they had intercepted was still playing. A flickering blue figure appeared. It was Bail Organa. "If you're hearing this," Bail said, his voice urgent, "then you are one of the few Jedi who remain. The Empire is hunting us, but we are not defeated." Ahsoka and Galen exchanged a glance. "We must come together," Bail continued. "I have begun forming a resistance against the Empire. If you wish to fight, find me on Ryada." The message ended. Silence filled the cockpit. Galen crossed his arms. "You think it's a trap?" Ahsoka shook her head. "No, Bail was always loyal to the Jedi." "But if we go," Galen said, "we're committing to war. No more running." Ahsoka's jaw tightened. "Then let's stop running." They set course for Ryada, and Darth Vader was already waiting. The moment they landed, they knew something was wrong. The town was silent. Too silent. Ahsoka stepped onto the dusty ground, scanning the streets. No civilians, no movement, just the feeling of being watched. Galen gripped his saber. "I don't like this." Then the shadows moved. Stormtroopers emerged from the alleyways. Dozens of them. Ahsoka ignited her sabers. Galen did the same. Then from the darkness a deep voice rumbled, "You have nowhere to run." Ahsoka's blood froze. Darth Vader stepped into the moonlight. The ground seemed to shake beneath him. His mechanical breathing filled the air. Galen swore under his breath. "He found us." Ahsoka swallowed. "We make our stand. Here, now." And then Vader attacked. The street exploded with movement. Vader came down like a hammer, his red blade crashing against Ahsoka's twin sabers. The force of the blow sent her skidding back, feet digging into the dirt. Galen struck from the side, trying to take advantage of an opening. But Vader anticipated it. He spun, blocking Galen's strike with a single hand. His free hand lashed out, and boom! A shockwave of the Force sent Galen flying into a wall. Ahsoka barely had time to react before Vader was on her again, his saber moving with brutal precision. "Your strength has grown, Snips," Vader said, voice cold. "But it will never be enough." Ahsoka gritted her teeth. "You don't get to call me that." She ducked under a killing strike and retaliated with a flurry of her own. Fast, relentless, desperate. Vader parried every attack with ease. Behind them, Galen rose from the rubble, shaking off the pain. He extended his hand, calling on the Force, and the ground itself trembled. With a roar, he unleashed a blast of Force lightning straight at Vader. Vader caught it with his hand. The Sith Lord clenched his fist, absorbing the power, and then redirected it, hurling the energy straight back at Galen. Galen screamed as his body convulsed from the shock. Ahsoka saw her chance. She lunged forward, slashing at Vader's side. He caught her wrist mid-strike. Pain exploded through Ahsoka's arm as Vader squeezed, crushing her bones with inhuman strength. She gasped, dropping one of her sabers. Vader pulled her closer until she was face to face with his mask. "You should have joined me," he said. Ahsoka spat in his face. Vader threw her like a rag doll. She crashed into the side of a transport, slumping to the ground. It was over, or at least it should have been. But then the ground exploded. Bright red blaster bolts rained from above. Imperial ships were shot out of the sky as a fleet of hidden resistance fighters revealed themselves. The streets erupted, with rebel soldiers, blaster fire tearing into stormtroopers. A familiar voice rang through the chaos. "Take them and go!" Ahsoka's blurry vision cleared just enough to see a cloak swirling through the battle. A figure wielding a green saber cut through the Imperials like a ghost. "Obi-Wan." Galen stumbled to his feet. "We gotta move!" Ahsoka barely registered him grabbing her as they were pulled onto a fleeing ship. The last thing she saw before the doors closed was Vader standing in the middle of the battlefield, watching them escape. His fists tightened, and then the ship was gone. When Ahsoka woke up, she was surrounded by familiar faces: Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the leaders of the rebellion. "You're safe now," Obi-Wan said softly. Ahsoka sat up, her body aching. "Safe isn't real anymore, Master." Obi-Wan gave her a sad smile. "No, I suppose it isn't." Bail stepped forward. "We have gathered the remnants of the Jedi and the Republic's loyalists. We're building something that can fight back." Galen smirked. "So we're officially rebels now?" Bail nodded. "Yes." Ahsoka looked at them all, the faces of the last hope for the galaxy. She turned to Obi-Wan. "And what about him?" Obi-Wan didn't need to ask who she meant. "Vader will hunt us," he said. "He will never stop." Ahsoka's fingers curled into fists. "Then neither will we." She turned to Bail. "Tell me what you need me to do." And with that, the rebellion was born. In the ruins of Rada, Darth Vader stood among the dead. His breathing was slow, calculated. He had let them escape, and now they believed they had won. How foolish! The Emperor's voice crackled through his communicator. Lord Vader, have they been eliminated? Vader stared at the stars. No, my master, he said, not yet. The Emperor's voice darkened. Then you know what must be done. Vader's grip on his saber tightened. Yes, he whispered. And somewhere, across the galaxy, Ahsoka and Galen felt the cold shadow of his hunt beginning once more. Months had passed since the battle on Raada. The rebellion had begun to take shape, but the Empire was closing in. Across the galaxy, Jedi survivors, Republic loyalists, and defectors were joining the fight. But with every step forward, Vader was waiting, hunting. Ahsoka and Galen had been leading raids against Imperial outposts, striking at supply lines and rescuing prisoners from Inquisitor camps. But they knew sooner or later the Empire would strike back. That moment came sooner than expected. The trap on Corellia. The rebellion received intel about a Jedi survivor on Corellia. Ahsoka and Galen led the mission, slipping past Imperial patrols and landing in the industrial district. The place was a maze of scrapyards and factories, steam hissing from vents as massive machines rumbled in the distance. This place feels off, Galen muttered. Ahsoka nodded. It's too quiet. They reached the supposed meeting point, a dimly lit warehouse. The doors slid open. A figure stood in the center, cloaked, hood up. A Jedi, or so they thought. The figure lifted their head, and beneath the hood, two burning yellow eyes stared. Back. Ahsoka's stomach dropped. Sith. Before they could react, the walls exploded inward. Stormtroopers poured in from all sides. Red sabers ignited in the shadows. Inquisitors, 3 of them. And then the doors at the far end tore open. Darth Vader stepped through. You never should have returned, he said. The room became chaos. Ahsoka and Galen lunged forward, sabers flashing as they met the Inquisitors in a deadly dance. The clash of red and blue bathed the warehouse in flickering light. One of the Inquisitors rushed Ahsoka, but she sidestepped, cutting through their shoulder in a clean strike. The Inquisitor screamed, collapsing. Galen wasn't as clean. He slammed his saber into his opponents, raw power shaking the floor beneath them. But then Vader moved, a blur of darkness. Faster than anything they had ever seen, his saber slammed into Ahsoka's guard, nearly knocking her off balance. Galen lunged at Vader's side, but Vader backhanded him with the Force, sending him crashing through a wall. Ahsoka's breath came sharp. This was not the same master she once knew. This was something worse. She barely had time to react before Vader's blade was slicing toward her. She parried, but his power was overwhelming. "You fight well," Vader said, "but you will lose." Ahsoka gritted her teeth. "Not today." She twisted, slipping under his guard and slashed, but Vader caught her saber with his hand. He squeezed. The hilt cracked under his grip, sparks flying. Ahsoka's eyes widened. She tried to pull away, but Vader's other hand grabbed her by the throat. The world blurred. Her lungs burned. Vader lifted her off the ground. "You are weak," he said. Ahsoka's vision dimmed. Then, boom! Galen crashed into Vader with all his strength, both hands unleashing a shockwave of the Force. Vader stumbled. Ahsoka collapsed, gasping for breath. Galen didn't stop. He unleashed a storm of Force lightning, blue and white energy crackling across the warehouse. Vader raised his saber and absorbed the lightning into his blade. Then he turned to Galen. Foolish. With a flick of his hand, he sent Galen flying again. Ahsoka forced herself up. "We have to go." Galen groaned, struggling to his feet. "We'll never make it." "Yes, we will," a voice called from above. They looked up. A freighter hovered over the warehouse, its side door open. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood there, hand outstretched. "Jump!" Ahsoka grabbed Galen and leapt. Vader lunged after them, but Obi-Wan extended his hand. A massive crate crashed between them, giving Ahsoka and Galen just enough time to land inside the freighter. The ship's engines roared. As the doors closed, Vader stood below, watching. And them escape. Again, the hunt was far from over. Back at the rebel base, tensions were high. Ahsoka and Galen stood before Bail Organa and Mon Mothma. Obi-Wan sat nearby, silent. "This was a disaster," Bail said. Ahsoka's fists tightened. "It was a trap." "We're running out of time," Galen muttered. "We can't just keep running. We need to strike back." Obi-Wan exhaled. "That is what Vader wants. To lure us into a fight on his terms." Galen shook his head. "Then we choose the battlefield. We make him come to us." Ahsoka looked at them both. "What if we destroy the Inquisitors?" Silence. Mon Mothma frowned. "That's no small task." "We don't need to kill them all," Ahsoka said. "Just cripple them. Take away their power base." Galen nodded. "We could set a trap of our own, lead them to a world of our choosing. Somewhere we have the advantage." Obi-Wan sighed. "That is a dangerous game." Ahsoka's expression hardened. "So is letting them hunt us to extinction." Bail looked at the others, thoughtful. Then he nodded. "Then let's prepare," he said. The war was about to change. Deep in the Emperor's palace, Darth Vader knelt before his master. Sidious looked down at him, eyes burning with cold amusement. "They continue to evade you, Lord Vader." Vader's fists clenched. "They will not escape again," he said. Sidious smiled. "See that they do not. You know what must be done." Vader rose. The rebels thought they had gained the advantage. They thought they could fight. But Vader was no mere warrior. He was the dark side incarnate, and when next they met, none would escape. The rebel fleet had relocated. The base on Ryada was abandoned, the network of cells across the outer rim shifting to new hiding places. But nowhere in the galaxy felt safe anymore. Not with Vader hunting them, not with the Empire tightening its grip. Ahsoka, Galen, and Obi-Wan sat in the command room of a hidden rebel outpost on Maigito. The holographic map displayed Imperial strongholds, Inquisitor fortresses, and strategic locations across the galaxy. "We have one shot at this," Ahsoka said. "We cripple the Inquisitorius, and we take away Vader's reach." Galen's fingers tapped the table. "So we hit the Fortress Inquisitorius on Nur." Obi-Wan shook his head. "No, that's what they'll expect. We must strike where they are weakest." Ahsoka's eyes narrowed. "Then we attack their training facility, the place where new Inquisitors are made." Galen smirked. "And burn it to the ground." Obi-Wan hesitated. "If we do this, there will be no turning back. The Emperor will respond with full force." Ahsoka met his gaze. "He already is." Silence. Then Bail Organa leaned forward. "Where is this facility?" Ahsoka looked at Galen. He grinned. "I know exactly where it is." The facility was hidden, deep beneath Mustafar's volcanic surface. A sprawling complex of black durasteel filled with potential Inquisitors, young Force sensitives being twisted into weapons for the Empire. The plan was simple: infiltrate, destroy, and leave nothing behind. Ahsoka, Galen, and a small strike. Teams slipped past the Imperial perimeter, their ship landing on a jagged lava cliffside. Obi-Wan had stayed behind. He was needed elsewhere. But this fight, this was theirs. Galen crouched at the edge of the ridge, eyes scanning the complex below. "Lots of guards," he muttered. "Automated turrets, sentry droids." Ahsoka's eyes narrowed. "And inside, children," Galen said darkly. Ahsoka's stomach twisted. She'd seen this before. The way the Empire took Force-sensitive children and reshaped them. Not this time. "We're getting them out," she said. Galen nodded. "Then let's make some noise." They moved. Like shadows they descended, taking. out sentries with precise, silent strikes. Ahsoka's sabers flashed white, Galen's red blade humming as he tore through stormtroopers. They breached the complex fast, rushing into the training halls. What they saw made Ahsoka's blood run cold. Children, no older than 10 or 12, wearing black Imperial robes, their hands clutching red training sabers. Ahsoka's heart pounded. They weren't just prisoners. They were already becoming inquisitors. A stormtrooper raised a blaster. Galen threw him into the wall with a flick of his wrist. Ahsoka knelt before one of the children. A Twi'lek girl, maybe 11. "You don't have to do this," Ahsoka whispered. The girl trembled. "They said you were the enemy." Ahsoka smiled softly. They lied. The alarms screamed. More inquisitors were coming. "Time to move," Galen growled. Ahsoka nodded. "We take them all." The children hesitated, but then one, an older boy, stepped forward. He looked at the fallen stormtroopers, the dead Inquisitor, trainees, and he dropped his saber. "Take us with you," he said. Ahsoka smiled. "Let's go." The moment they reached the hangar, it happened. A shiver in the Force. Ahsoka's stomach dropped. Then the blast doors slammed shut. The air grew cold, and a dark figure stepped through the fire and smoke. Darth Vader. "You cannot run forever," he said. Ahsoka's fingers tightened around her sabers. "We don't need to." Galen ignited his blade. "We end this." Vader tilted his head. "You presume too much." Then he attacked. Faster than a storm he struck. Ahsoka barely dodged as his saber tore through the air. Sparks erupted as Galen blocked, their blades locking in a shower of red and blue light. The children ran for the ship, guided by rebel soldiers. Ahsoka and Galen held the line. Galen lunged, raw fury in his strikes. Vader batted him aside like a child. Ahsoka moved with precision, her blades dancing. Vader met every strike effortlessly. Then Vader lifted a hand. The air tightened. Ahsoka gasped as the Force crushed her lungs. She hit the ground hard, vision blurring. Galen roared, attacking again. Vader caught his blade with one hand and twisted it free, sending it clattering to the floor. "You are nothing," Vader growled. Galen snarled, lifting both hands. Lightning exploded from his fingertips. Vader absorbed it into his palm. Then he sent it back. Galen screamed, his body writhing as the energy slammed him into the durasteel wall. Vader advanced. Ahsoka forced herself up, gasping for breath. She saw Galen collapsing, smoke rising from his body. Vader raised his blade. "Goodbye, apprentice." Ahsoka's heart stopped. Then, boom! The hangar doors exploded inward. A freighter roared through, blaster cannons firing, smoke and debris flying as Obi-Wan Kenobi leapt from the ship. His blue blade met Vader's red with a thunderous clash. "Not today," Obi-Wan said. Vader growled, "Kenobi." Ahsoka grabbed Galen, dragging him toward the ship. The children were already aboard. Obi-Wan held Vader back, his strikes calm and precise, matching the Sith Lord's fury with practiced skill. "Ahsoka!" Obi-Wan shouted. "Go!" She hesitated. Obi-Wan met her gaze. "Trust the Force." Ahsoka's chest tightened. Then she turned and ran. The ramp closed behind them. Engines roared. As they blasted away from Mustafar, Ahsoka looked back. The last thing she saw was Vader and Obi-Wan, blades locked in battle, the fire of Mustafar burning around them. Her hands shook. Galen groaned beside her. "We weren't ready," he muttered. Ahsoka swallowed hard. "No," she said, "but we will be." She looked out at the stars. This war was far from over. The rebel fleet drifted in the darkness of space. The stars shimmered beyond the viewport of the command deck, but Ahsoka felt nothing but the cold weight of the war pressing down on her shoulders. Mustafar had been a victory, but a hollow one. They had freed the children, but they had lost. Obi-Wan and Vader was still out there. Galen stood beside her, arms crossed, his face still bruised from their last encounter. He's not dead, Galen muttered. Ahsoka glanced at him. You don't know that. I know him. Galen's voice was dark, bitter. Kenobi's not the type to go down easy. Ahsoka wanted to believe that, but she knew better than anyone how ruthless Vader was. Bail Organa approached, his usual calm replaced with urgency. We intercepted Imperial transmissions. The Emperor himself has summoned Vader back to Coruscant. They're preparing for something big. Ahsoka's heart tightened. What is it? Bail hesitated. A trap, he said. Galen smirked. Then we spring it. Ahsoka exhaled slowly. She had spent so long running from this fight, but now it was time to end it. We attack Coruscant, she said. Everyone in the room stilled. Bail's eyes widened. That's suicide. No, Ahsoka said. That's our only chance. Silence. Then Galen grinned. Let's burn it all down. The Emperor stood at the heart of the Empire. The vast throne room, a cavernous chamber of polished black obsidian, was empty save for one figure kneeling before him. Darth Vader. Palpatine's yellow eyes narrowed. You failed. Vader's head remained bowed. Kenobi intervened. Palpatine's fingers tightened on his throne. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with dark energy. You have grown weak. Vader's hands curled into fists. No, Palpatine sneered. Then prove it. The doors hissed open. Red-robed Imperial guards stepped aside as the Grand Inquisitor entered. He bowed deeply. My lord, the Grand Inquisitor said, we have received intelligence that the rebels are mobilizing. Their fleet is moving toward us. Palpatine grinned. Let them come. Vader slowly stood. This time, Palpatine whispered, there will be no escape. The rebel fleet dropped out of hyperspace above the city world. Star destroyers loomed ahead, hundreds of them. TIE fighters swarmed, their screams filling the void. This is suicide, one of the rebel pilots whispered over the comms. Galen grinned. Then let's make it count. Ahsoka's fingers tightened on the controls of her fighter. They had one mission, break through to the Imperial Palace. The final confrontation awaited. The sky erupted with blaster fire. The battle had begun. They stormed the throne room. Ahsoka and Galen burst through the towering doors, their blades igniting in unison. Vader stood at the top of the throne steps, waiting. You've come to die, Vader rumbled. Ahsoka's grip tightened. No! She leapt. Their blades clashed. Red against white, sparks flew, the Force screaming as the battle ignited. Galen attacked from the side, slashing high. Vader blocked, shoving him back with a brutal Force wave. Ahsoka pressed forward, striking fast and relentless, but Vader countered effortlessly, his strength overpowering her. You are nothing without Kenobi, Vader growled. Ahsoka gritted her teeth, then ducked low, her saber slicing toward Vader's leg. He caught her mid-motion, lifting her with the Force, then hurled her into a pillar. She crashed hard, vision blurring. Galen roared, unleashing lightning. Vader absorbed it, stepping forward, his fist clenched. Galen froze in place, his body locking up. The Force crushed him. Vader slowly raised his free hand, squeezing. Galen choked, his eyes bulging, his skin paling. Ahsoka forced herself up. No! She lunged forward, her blade slashing down. Vader let go of Galen, and in one swift motion caught Ahsoka's wrist, then drove his saber through her stomach. Ahsoka gasped. Pain. Blinding, burning pain. Vader's mask tilted down at her. You were never strong enough, he whispered. Ahsoka's fingers trembled, her vision fading. Vader yanked his saber free. Ahsoka collapsed. She felt the floor, against her cheek, her blood pooling beneath her. Her eyes flickered to Galen. He was on his knees, his body shaking, his gaze met hers. And in that moment, something inside him snapped. Galen let out a scream of raw fury. And the room exploded. The Force storm erupted outward, tearing through the throne room, shattering walls and flinging Imperial guards like ragdolls. Galen rose to his feet, his entire body crackling with dark energy. Vader turned, swinging his saber. Galen caught it with his bare hand. "You," Galen whispered, his voice like a storm. "You took everything from me." Vader yanked his saber back, but Galen held firm. Then, with a snarl of rage, Galen ripped the saber from Vader's grip. Vader's head tilted slightly. For the first time, he hesitated. Galen lifted his hands, and then he unleashed hell. Lightning tore through Vader's armor, searing through his limbs, frying his mechanical circuits. Vader staggered back, his breath ragged, broken. Galen advanced. The throne room collapsed around them, the dark side crackling in the air. Vader fell to one knee. Galen stood over him, breathing hard. "You," Galen whispered, "are no longer my master." Then he raised his hands. A final surge of power erupted. Vader's body convulsed, his armor shattered, sparks erupting from his cybernetics. Then, silence. Smoke rose from the ruins of the throne room, and Darth Vader was no more. The Emperor was gone. The Death Star plans were stolen, and the Empire began to fall. Ahsoka survived, barely. Galen vanished into the Outer Rim, his fate unknown. But the rebellion had won, and the galaxy, at long last, was free.